How's it going? I'm Desmeric, and I hope you're having a great day today. I'm very excited to be making this video because the Hydro homie himself, Sicaro, is here. I'm sure most of those in the Revenblade community know this already, but I've been so looking forward to Sicaro coming to the game. To catch everyone up to speed, Sicaro is a character that has been in Revenblade before, but didn't have a finished model and was under the title Water Mage. This iteration of Water Mage seemed to be a sort of disruptor that was honestly kind of fun. You could cover the ground in puddles of water and use other abilities to interact with these puddles, creating pillars of water, stunning enemies in ice crystals, or freezing the puddles and make platforms. Water Mages had a kit before this one, so this wasn't exactly their first pass, but it's the one I'm most familiar with. While the kit of Water Mage was fun to mess around with and had some cool ideas, it ultimately wasn't cohesive and felt too clunky in overall game flow, so the kit was scrapped and Water Mage was put on the back burner for a bit. Over the course of time, pieces of Sicaro have been teased with a finished model and a completely new and reworked kit of abilities that I honestly find very interesting and can't wait to get my hands on. In this video, we'll be taking a look at Sicaro's kit, and I'll let you know what I think about the abilities as we go along. I hope you're as excited as I am. Before we get to the abilities, I want to say a couple things. Medallion Slate released a devlog as of the making of this video. I'll leave a link to the devlog in the description, so give it a look and see. The log goes into detailing Sicaro's kit, of course, but also showing off some quality of life changes to the game's launcher, character select, and overall polish getting ready for beta. Going into that, most of the characters now have ability names. It's not a big deal, but it's the little things that can be exciting. I decided to come up with names for Sicaro's abilities. I won't be giving names to the basic attacks as I don't think basic attacks need a name, and the passive, because, well, it already has a name. With that said, let's start with Sicaro's passive ability. Real quick for just a second, I wanted to add a sort of editor's note. The footage you're seeing is a playtest that Medallion Slate hosted for patrons, and it showcases Sicaro and the 2-lane map, which I will say, both are very fun, but you know, that's a discussion for the Revencast. I wanted to mention this because the next couple segments are not exactly outdated, but the things I talk about here are sort of already addressed or already in the game, such as Sicaro's abilities having names and Sicaro having augments. I re-recorded this script like 3 or 4 times, so no going back, no backsies. Sicaro's passive ability is called Drenched. Landing basics or abilities marks enemies as drenched. Drenched is a stack, and when it reaches 5, the water morphs, forming an area around the enemy that explodes after a couple of seconds. This will damage and apply Drench to all enemies in range and consume the original target's Drench stacks. This passive gives me Kaya vibes. Both she and Sicaro want to build up stacks, but the difference is while Kaya can have her other abilities do different things when the stacks are consumed, Sicaro's plan is to spread damage around the area and burst people down, making enemies just bubbles waiting to be popped. You could also have a chain reaction with Drench stacks popping, triggering those around the Drench target to have them reach max stacks and just having everyone just explode. I like this passive. It's simple but effective. Next up is Sicaro's basic attack. He can fire mid to long-range hydro shots with an arc and is the main source of applying Drench stacks. This is a lob style basic, but other than that, nothing too special here. Part of me wishes that the old heavy got worked into this basic somehow, but I'm not sure how that would work. Next, we have Sicaro's secondary ability, Splash Zone. Sicaro will channel a spherical water attack. The projectile speed and size will increase depending on how long Sicaro channels. On impact, Splash Zone will deal damage and leave the area it hits wet for a few seconds, slowing enemies that run in it. I like that Sicaro has small bits of CC with this ability. Sure, it can deal some good damage, which is arguably more important, but it can also be used to try and bait a mobility skill out of the enemies, or you can use it to slow someone that has already burned their mobility. This skill has more than one use, and that's a plus for me. Sicaro's heavy skill, Aquatic Artillery, is a passive and also an active ability. Passively, hitting enemies with basics and abilities adds water to Sicaro's tank. As an active, Sicaro channels and fires a flurry of water missiles in an AoE around him for a few seconds, damaging every enemy in range as well as applying a stack of Drenched every second during the duration. I definitely think this has that heavy ability feel to it. Aquatic Artillery will be the focal point of Sicaro's damage and for spreading Drench stacks. You do leave yourself a little vulnerable to the enemy team while unleashing this barrage, but the risk may be worth it. Moving on to Sicaro's mobility skill, Swift Swim. It allows Sicaro to dive a short distance in the direction of movement after a brief delay. There's not a lot to say with this skill. It's a dash with the windup. And finally, we have Sicaro's defensive ability, Siren's Grace. Sicaro forms a bubble shield around him for a couple of seconds that explodes at the end of the duration. Siren's Grace will damage and root all enemies in range for 1 second, applying a stack of Drenched to each enemy hit. Sicaro is a character that wants to get into a fight and spread out damage and Drench stacks, and this ability works well with that playstyle. You dash in and prime Siren's Grace to set all targets up to be bombarded by aquatic artillery. You could even engage to start a team fight and fire off Siren's Grace to set up for your team to clean house. Now, I know I didn't originally mention augments, but I think this could be a fun thing to discuss as well. I'm not sure what augments Sicaro could have or how many he'll have for each ability. I'm sure Medallion Slate has augs in line for Revenblade's Michael Phelps, but I still think it'd be fun to talk about what augs there could be for him. Feel free to leave any augment ideas you have in the comment section. For the R&B, you could have a supportive effect to have allies who are in the area have increased movement speed. Use it as a secondary mobility skill and create distance from the enemies, or use it to chase down fleeing targets. You could have it act as a geyser to take a page from Old Water Mage's book, lob a projectile to an area, and, after a second, it erupts into a geyser, knocking enemies up. There aren't many knockups in the game, and this could be a fun form of CC for Sicaro to play around with. You could keep the slow until the geyser triggers, or just get rid of the slow entirely, but I think if that happens, the activation of the geyser needs to be quicker. I think an AUG for the heavy could be transforming the AoE bombardment into a big channel of big water projectile and lob it into an area to stun everyone who is hit and apply max drench stacks. This one is probably way too much, but it could be cool to see, changing up the playstyle a little bit. A much tamer augment could be to increase his movement speed while channeling the ability. Sicaro is slowed down while it's going, so it could make sense to buff his movement speed to keep him mobile. Another possible AUG would be to root Sicaro in place, but the projectiles hit much harder and slow on hit, sticking to that get-in playstyle. Maybe my bias is showing here. The mobility could have so much done to it. You could add a second charge to it, but have the second dash be instant and have him dash upward to give him more vertical movement. Not too crazy, but giving Sicaro this could give him a way of giving his pursuers the slip. You could get a little crazy and have Sicaro do a long distance dash and form a water wall behind him that can slow enemies when they walk through it. This one gives a bit of a survivability aspect to the dash, aside from being a getaway button. You can also use it to cut off line of sight to an entryway to a shard or something. I don't know how important or impactful it will be, but I think it'd be a cool augment. To give Sicaro more longevity in a fight, you could give him an AUG where if the defensive roots at least 3 people, Sicaro gets another shield. This gives him more life in a team fight to be that bursty combative character without getting blown up. You could have an AUG that cleanses CC, and if any was cleared, you shoot water missiles like from the heavy, but not as strong. This probably isn't the strongest AUG, but it does have the potential to knock out any stragglers. I don't think these augments are anything crazy or groundbreaking. Hell, they may not even be good at all. I'm just curious to see what AUGs Medallion Slate comes up with for our swimmy boy. I may have a bit of bias here when I say that I think Sicaro's kit is very cool and looks super fun to fool around with. The potential combo game with stacking Drenched and just spreading damage everywhere could lead to some fun moments with Sicaro. While I think his kit is awesome, it's just as awesome to be able to have the Hydra Homie in the hands of the players. This has been a long time coming, and I am so stoked to properly play this character. Definitely will be crunching games with him. We do have more characters on the horizon. We have Valkyrie, which we've had concept art spoiled for. Also, there's Ophelia, the Twin Shield Maiden. We don't really know much about either of these two, except with what's speculated by Valkyrie's concept art. Whether or not they'll be released before beta, who's to guess? Probably not. Thank you guys for checking out this video. I'm sure you can tell how excited I am that Sicaro is coming soon. I'll definitely try and get some gameplay in for the channel, as I haven't really done that yet and have been meaning to. If you want to check out Revenblade, I'll leave a link to download it in the description below, as well as the Discord server so you can stay in touch if any more playtests happen. The next playtest to happen will actually happen on Steam, so head over to their Steam page and request access. May as well wishlist the game too. If you enjoyed this video, give it a like, subscribe to the channel if you like to see more Revenblade content, and hit the bell. But most importantly, be sure to take care of yourself. Thanks again for watching. Hope to see you soon.